This is part 2, episode 474. Yeah. After Jin Tong Kunping's voice transmission, he quickly fled into the fierce abyss of the gods. John Ji, who was holding a sword behind him, chased after him, and said sharply, "Leave your life for me." SHHHHH-. Immediately, when John Ji's right hand was spinning at a high speed, 1,000 Zhonglong blade of the semisacred power of the wind ripped apart the sky and slashed towards the golden pupil Kunping. Undoubtedly, if he was killed, the consequences would be unimaginable. After all, Zhangji's strength is really much stronger than Jin Tong Kunping. Ha ha ha, each of you, one bird, will die. The sound of Zhangji's arrogance came to an abrupt end, and the next scene made him have an ominous premonition, which came from the bottom of his heart. In his sight, when he saw Kunping, who was originally 1,000 feet tall, his size suddenly soared to 30,000 feet, covering the sky and the sun. Immediately afterwards, the speed of the golden pupil Kunping increased sharply. After escaping a series of sword beams, he drew a huge arc from the void, bypassed his right side, and flew towards the exit of the fierce abyss of gods. One side swoops down. No, its target is the eldest young master. John Ji roared hoarsely, "Protect the eldest young master, hurry up." Boom. Suddenly, as the sky collapsed, misty flames burned on John Ji's head. But he did not hesitate to burn the half-holy soul to improve his strength and speed. Whoosh! John Ji, whose face was distorted, pale and bleeding from 7 orifices, his speed increased sharply, and he dived towards the golden pupil Kunping at extreme speed. At this moment, at the exit of the fierce abyss of the gods, John Zuyan was so frightened that he roared at the more than 290 earth gods behind him, "Protect me." After that, John Zuyan quickly got into the ground. Buzz dash. In the midst of the turbulent void, the golden pupil Kunping stretched out his huge right claw, and grabbed it towards the more than 290 old earth gods below. Ah! Help! 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 The screams of more than 290 earth gods stopped abruptly. Crack! Crack! When a clear sound of bone cracking sounded, they were crushed to death under the giant claws of the golden pupil Kunping. Their strongest is only the 7th level earth god. Facing the slaughter of the 6th level heavenly beast's golden pupil Kunping, the weak have no power to resist. Boom! With a bang, the dust filled the air, and the giant claws of Kunping's golden eyes penetrated deeply into the ground and grabbed John Zuyan, who was hiding in the ground. John Zuyan, who was hiding in the ground, felt deafening, and he roared in despair, "John Ji, where is your motherfucker?" At this moment, John Ji, who burned the half-sacred soul and bleeds from the 7 orifices, has appeared above the head of Jin Tong Kunping, and said anxiously, "Don't be afraid, young master, my subordinates will definitely save you. Break me." John Ji threw out the sword in his hand, and the threatening sword suddenly turned into a giant, and slashed towards the right leg of Jin Tong Kunping. Once cut, the right leg will be broken. When Jin Tong Kunping subconsciously wanted to withdraw his legs, Tan Yun said through a voice transmission, "You don't need to withdraw your legs, just pull out John Zuyan for me." Yeah. In the sound transmission room of Kunping Jin Tong, the giant claw inserted into the ground brought a pile of soil and brought John Zuyan out of the soil. Ah! Jin Tong Kunping made a painful sound, but his right leg was cut off by the sword. However, in the next instant, the severe pain from Jin Tong Kunping's right leg disappeared. As if the pain never came. However, at the critical moment, Tan Yun reversed the time, and Jin Tong Kunping's right leg was instantly restored to its original state. And the huge sword that was slashing at her, at this time, slashed at her right leg again. The only difference from before is that now John Zuyan has been brought out from the grounds. Seeing this, John Ji, who swooped down in the void, was extremely terrified. He never imagined that the scene of time reversal would appear. You know, this magical power has been lost for a long time. Since the fall of Hongmeng Supreme, no one has used it again. Of course, at this moment, he didn't have time to think about it, so he could only shout, "Eldest young master, run away in the direction of your subordinates." Okay. John Zuyin, who was still in shock, when he rose into the sky, Tan Yun smiled grimly, "It's a pity, you can't escape." Space cage. As Tan Yun used this magical power, something that made John Zuyin feel desperate suddenly happened. But there is a tyrannical binding force in the surrounding space, squeezing away towards John Zuyin like an overwhelming sea. John Zuyin, who has the strength of the 9th level Earth God, is like being in a swamp and is struggling. "John Ji, save me. Save me quickly." John Zhu shouted with his eyes cracked. However, John Ji, who is in the vast void, is helpless. Because at this time, Tan Yun had already appeared beside John Zuyin with his Hongmeng divine step. He raised his fist and smashed it towards his chest. "You have chased and killed Lao Tzu for so many years. Today, Lao Tzu will give you a punch and send you to see your second brother." Boom. The blood mist filled the air and the bones were splattered. John Zuyin's chest burst open, and then Tan Yun rolled over and kicked his toes on his chin. Boom. When John Zuyin's skull exploded, Tan Yun turned into an afterimage, swept up on the back of Jin Tong Kunping, and said anxiously, "Flee." The golden pupil Kunping let out a high and loud long cry, and flew out of the fierce abyss of the gods, soaring over the mountains at high speed, and disappeared into the sky in the breath. "What? Kunping, and you kid. I must kill you all." Zhangji's facial features were extremely distorted, and while burning the half-sacred soul, he quickly chased after Jin Tong Kunping. At this moment, Zhangji was both frightened and angry. The anger is that a mere 6th-class human actually killed the eldest young master in front of him with the perfect cooperation with that beast. What was terrifying was that the director of the exhibition house, his uncle, asked him to come to arrest the murderer, in order to make himself meritorious, and to be reused by the head of the family. But now, I am incompetent. I didn't catch the murderer, and I watched helplessly, the eldest young master died in front of him. He knew that if he didn't catch the murderer, he would inevitably suffer the wrath of the owner when he returned to Jianfu. Even if his uncle is the general manager, I'm afraid he can't save his life. Therefore, he frantically motivated the semi-sacred power of the wind in his body, and after locking Jin Tong Kunping with his spiritual sense, he chased after Jin Tong Kunping. Just half an hour later, he appeared in the void in the 30,000 immortals behind Jin Tong Kunping. "Brother, what if he's going to catch up?" As Jin Tong Kunping flew, his giant eyes were full of worry. Tan Yun looked back at John Ji, who was constantly getting closer to him, with a fearless look, like answering Jin Tong Kunping, or telling John Ji, "It's okay, he can't catch up with us. He has burned the half-sacred soul for half an hour, and soon he will be severely attacked. At that time, even if he catches up with us, he will already be seriously injured. At that time, we will join forces and destroy him again." It is. Tan Yun's words, both true and false, can be said to have far-reaching intentions. John Ji was attacked and would be seriously injured. This was true, but Tan Yun knew that he and Jin Tong Kunping were still unable to compete with him. Fighting at that time will definitely kill you. The reason why he said this was to fight psychological warfare with Zhangji. He bet Zhangji would back down. Hearing this, Kunping Jin Tong sent a voice transmission to Tan Yun, "Brother, are you telling the truth? Then we will wait for a while. We can kill him after he is attacked." Tan Yun's voice transmission said, "Of course it's fake. He is a 5th-class semi-sage. After the half-sacred soul is burned, his strength will be greatly reduced, but we are still not his opponents. I just scared him. Run for your life, then run away. When Tan Yun and Jin Tong Kunpeng transmitted their voices, John Ji, who was chasing after him, was indeed a little worried. Tan Yun's words affected him. He couldn't help but back off. Leave the green hills so I won't be afraid of running out of firewood. I can't die. If I want to live, there will always be a chance to catch that kid again. That kid's voice and that look, I remember it. Yes, I can't die. I should return to the Supreme God King City, and tell the Patriarch the news of the death of the eldest young master. With my uncle protecting me, I shouldn't be executed. When thinking of this, John Ji felt a dizziness in his mind, and realized that he had begun to suffer from backlash. He roared angrily, Kunpeng, as well as you who killed the eldest young master and the second young master, sooner or later, I will catch you all. Facing the pale and powerless threat, Tan Yun smiled. At the same time, he was relieved. It seemed that this kid was bluffed. Tan Yun looked back, but seeing John Ji who was bleeding from the 7 orifices, he turned around and flew away. Ha 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 ha, it's finally raining and sunny. After Tan Yun laughed heartily, he sent a voice transmission to Jin Tong Kunpeng, Xiaolu, just in case that kid is cheating, you still have to fly with all your strength. Also, you release your divine sense to lock him to see if he really leaves. The battle turns and the stars move, the next day, the hour. Jin Tong Kunpeng sent a voice transmission to Tan Yun during the flight, brother, he has left, and my consciousness can no longer cover him. Okay, great. Tan Yun said with a smile, this way we can go to Qingyang Shenhu with peace of mind. Time flies, 2 years later. Supreme God King City. A beam of light fell from the sky, flew outside the Zhanfu, and turned into Zhanji. With an ugly face, he ignored the guard who bowed to him, stepped into the mansion, and went straight to the palace of the chief steward. When he came to the main hall, he found that his uncle was not there. He stepped out of the hall and looked at the maid who passed by and said, where is my uncle? The maid said respectfully, the master just returned from the battlefield an hour ago. Now the master is in charge of the master. Hearing this, John Ji took a deep breath, and went straight to the main hall of the Patriarch. Just outside the hall, John Ji heard the conversation between John Peng, the head of the house, and John De, the uncle. John De. John Ji has been away for so many years. Why hasn't the killer of Zhu Qian been caught yet? Patriarch, don't worry, this old slave's nephew is serious in his work and extraordinary in ability, and he can definitely bring the murderer back. Well, I hope, if Zhangji can really catch the murderer, then the head of the family will find a position for him in the army and be loyal to Lord Lingxia Tianzuan. Listening to the conversation in the hall, Zhangji took a deep breath, knelt down suddenly outside the hall, and kowtowed, Patriarch, your subordinates are not doing well, and you and your uncle have been disappointed. Please punish. The two in the hall were stunned when they heard the words, followed the sound and looked at John Ji. Jia, what's going on? With your strength, you didn't find the murderer? John De asked. Alas. John Peng sighed, okay, get up, come in and talk. It's the head of the family. John Ji got up and walked into the hall. Tell me, why didn't the murderer catch him? John Peng's face was gloomy, thinking of his most beloved and dead second son, his heart was burning with anger. John Ji said truthfully, reporting to the Patriarch, the murderer is a 6th-class god, but he somehow moved the golden-winged Kunpeng to help him escape from the fierce abyss of gods. The subordinates burned the half-sacred soul, but in the end they didn't catch up. Hearing this, John Peng's turbid eyes filled with cold light. The golden-winged Kunpeng dares to oppose the head of the family, it's really outrageous. At this time, John De said, Patriarch, do you think the murderer will follow the golden-winged Kunpeng to Kunpeng Tianhai? It's very possible. After John Peng said, he suddenly thought of something, looked at Zhongji and asked, "Where's the eldest young master? Have you come back?" Thump. Zhongji suddenly knelt down and kowtowed. "Patriarch, the eldest young master was killed by that kid." Without waiting for Zhongji's words, John Peng's old body shook, his eyes widened, and he shouted, What did you say?" "Patriarch, this subordinate has already tried his best." Zhongji kowtowed, "It's the subordinate's incompetence, please punish the patriarch." Plop. Zhonda immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed, "Patriarch, it's the old slave who is not doing well, it's the fierce abyss that the old slave sent Zhongji to. Please spare Jia's life and kill the old slave." John Peng looked at the two kneeling on the ground, turbid tears dripped down. After a long time, he let out a hysterical roar, "Yuna, my child." Puff puff. John Peng's old body trembled violently, spurted 3 mouthfuls of blood, raised his head and screamed. His voice was mixed with endless sadness and anger. Thinking of the second son John Zutian and the eldest son John Zuyun, who died in the hands of one person one after another, he was so angry that his face turned purple and his facial features were distorted. "Patriarch, you have to take care of your health." Zhonda hurriedly stood up to help John Peng. "It hurts your body so much." John Peng spit out another mouthful of blood, his eyes were red. "My 3 sons, 2 have died, can I not be angry?" After speaking, John Peng shouted at Zhongji on the ground, "Useless trash. Tell me, what happened? With you here, how could my Yuna die?" Zhongji kept silent and told John Peng what happened. When John Peng heard, rewinding time, he suddenly thought of his former master, Hongmeng Supreme. Immediately, his face was pale, and he was in a cold sweat. Immediately, he shook his head and said, "No, Lord Shuyuan Supreme has already deduced it, and after discovering that Hongmeng Supreme is eternal, he has already died. It must be the murderer who used a trick, or the murderer is the aptitude of the time attribute, which caused it to look like the time has gone backwards. Yes, it must be like this." Looking at John Peng, who was extremely frightened, Zhonda agreed, "Patriarch, you are right, Hongmeng Supreme has long since died. In the world, no one will use time backwards." After saying this, Zhonda hurriedly transmitted a voice to Zhongji, "Look, you scared the patriarch. The last thing the patriarch wants to hear is anything about Hongmeng Supreme. Don't you apologize." When Zhongji heard this, he kowtowed, "Patriarch, perhaps his subordinates made a mistake at the time. I'm sorry, my subordinates failed to protect the eldest young master, and my subordinates deserve to die for their crimes." John Peng stretched out a finger and pointed at Zhongji angrily, "If it wasn't for your uncle's sake, the owner of the family would really want to kill you with one palm. You are a dignified 5th class and semisage, not only failed to stop a 6th class heavenly beast Kunpeng, but also let that evil beast take the murderer, kill Yuna and run away. Until now, the owner of this family doesn't even look like the murderer. I know, it really **** me off." At this time, Zhongji bit the bullet and said, "Patriarch, this subordinate has a plan, maybe we can catch the murderer." "Speak." John Peng said solemnly. Zhongji still knelt down, "Go to Kunpeng Tianhai, arrest all Kunpeng, and force Kunpeng who was with the murderer to show up, so that the murderer can be found." After hearing this, John Peng was furious, "Get out of here. I don't want to see you idiot now." Zhongji got up in a hurry, his legs went weak with fright, and left the hall. "Patriarch, what Jia said makes sense," Zhonda said cautiously. John Peng took a deep breath and said, "This time, I followed the Supreme Divine King to go on an expedition, and encountered the siege of the 12-winged demon generals from outside the territory, and almost lost my life. The speed of the 12-winged demon king is really terrifying. In our universe, only the speed of the Kunpeng 6 clan can match it. So Lingxia Tianzuan wants to win over the 6 Kunpeng clans, devote allegiance to her, and deal with the 12-winged demon king outside the territory. But the Kunpeng 6 clans, since ancient times, have sworn allegiance to Hongmeng Supreme, and it is even more difficult to win over. If at this time, because of my son's reasons, go to the Kunpeng clan to start a teacher and ask for guilt, it will definitely affect the Lord Tianzuan to win over the 6 clans. Also, we can't go to Kunpeng Qianhai. Today's master of the Kunpeng 6 clans is so powerful that even Originator Supreme and Chaos Supreme must be in or of 3 points. We went. At that time, if we don't get it right, we anger the other party, and it's not impossible for the other party to destroy us. You must know that the Kunpeng 6 clans are not easy to mess with. Hearing this, Zhonda nodded and said, so that's the case. But the Patriarch, since the Kunpeng 6 clan swears allegiance to the Supreme Lord Hongmeng, why didn't the 2 Supremes cut them down? Zhong Peng sighed and said, you don't know that the blood of the 6 Kunpeng clans can open up the connection between the Heart of Origin, the Heart of Chaos, and the Heart of Hongmeng. In this way, the hearts of the 3 major gods can release the vast power to prevent the cosmos from being destroyed. Therefore, this is the real reason why the 2 supreme beings, Lord Lingxia Tianzuan, ordered the killing of Kunpeng is strictly prohibited. Okay, this matter is too far away, let's not mention it. The most urgent task is to figure out how to find the murderer. At this time, Zhonda seemed to have thought of something, and hurriedly said, Patriarch, this old slave called Jia. There are some things, please ask him to confirm. Later, Zhonda called John Ji and asked, since the murderer is masked, do you remember his voice and eyes? Uncle, nephew remembered. Zhang Ji affirmed, as long as he meets him, just by his voice and eyes, nephew can judge that he is the murderer. Okay, very good. After Zhanda sneered, he bowed to Zhanping and said, Patriarch, Lingxia Tianzuan has an order, in the Hongmeng God realm, except for the King of Gods, the descendants of nobles and servants, anyone, after being promoted to the gods, all have to join the army, we can start from here. Yes, I'm so confused, how could I forget this? Zhong Peng's eyes showed a hint of coldness, and he looked at Zhong Ji and ordered, this Patriarch will go to Lord Lingxia Tianzuan, let Lingxia Lord Xia Tianzuan show the search warrant. When the search warrant is in hand, I will send a strong person to protect you, leave the family immediately, and on my behalf, go to the other nobles to check the personnel one by one. I have checked all the nobles and the palace of the gods. It is expected to take 100 years. Don't say 100 years, even if it takes 1,000 years. The murderer will not be able to advance from the 6th level human ******* to the 1st level god. After 100 years, if you don't find the murderer, then you will come back to retreat and practice. To be on the safe side, after 500 years, you will go to Hongmeng Divine City to investigate the people who went to join the army one by one. In this way, the murderer can definitely be found out, but it's just a matter of time. After a while, Zhong Peng flew out of the Supreme Divine King City, and at the speed of his second-class Divine King, he arrived at Hongmeng Divine City after only half a year. After hearing about what happened to Zhong Peng, Lingxia Tianzuan readily agreed and issued a search warrant. The reason why Lingxia Tianzuan agreed so readily is because it used to be the hiding place of Hongmeng Supreme provided by Zhong Peng. After Zhong Peng got the search warrant, it took another half a year to return to Jianfu, the city of the Supreme God. Afterwards, Zhong Peng transferred 2 9th-level great saints from the army to protect Zhongji and leave the Supreme God King City, and began to prepare to search the Hongmeng God realm, all the palaces and nobles of the God King. At the same time, in Hongmeng God realm, in the southern mountain range, there is an ancient sacred mountain, Qingyang Sacred Mountain. In the mountain stream under the sacred mountain, where the lush greens are dripping and the divine essence lingers, there is a Bibo lake with a radius of 100,000 immortals, Qingyang Shenhu. This lake was unknown 30,000 years ago, but since someone accidentally discovered an ancient teleportation formation at the bottom of the lake at that time, until it was discovered that one end of the teleportation formation was a vast ancient realm, Qingyang Shenhu became famous for the three major realms. With the news of another cave in the Qingyang Shenhu spreading throughout the Hongmeng God realm, in the past 30,000 years, there has been an endless stream of people who have come to experience the treasure hunt. Therefore, in the mountains behind Qingyang Sacred Mountain, in the past 30,000 years, a square market has gradually formed, Qingyang Square City. The buildings in Qingyangfang are quite magnificent, with inns, restaurants, and shops selling goods everywhere. Those who go to the ancient gods to find treasures can go to the square market and sell them to shops at high prices, or they can trade on their own in exchange for what each other needs. Since Qingyangfang City is relatively close to Xuehu God King City, it is guarded by the Xuehu God Clan Army. The Snow Fox God King has an order, no matter who it is, after entering the market, no private fights are allowed, and those who violate the order will be killed without mercy. If you want to fight, you can leave Fang City and fight in the mountains. Night falls. Whizzing. At this time, 2 beams of white light and 1 gold beam pierced the sky and turned into a man and a woman at the top of Qingyang Divine Mountain. The young man in white robe is naturally Tan Yun. The girl in the golden skirt is Jing Lu. On the way here, Jing Lu told Tan Yun that the Xuehu Protoss army was stationed in Fangsha. Tan Yun stopped at the top of the peak, looked back and looked down at the Qingyangfang city, which was like a giant city between the mountains, and there was a strong hatred in the stars. Because the patriarch of the Snow Fox God clan, who is also the current Snow Fox God King, also betrayed Tan Yun in the past. And the God King Xuehu, after his death in the past, led the Xuehu God clan army to slaughter his subordinates with other rebels. Tan Yun retracted his gaze and looked at the night sky in the east, which was the direction of the Snow Fox God King city. Tan Yun's eyes were bloodthirsty, and he whispered to himself, God King Xuehu, wait for me, one day, I will make your Xuehu God clan go extinct. Afterwards, Tan Yun breathed a deep sigh of relief and looked at Jing Lu sideways. Let's go to the ancient god realm. Well. Jing Lu nodded and said softly, brother, there will be many heavenly venerates inside. These heavenly venerates are all gods. If they don't go on expedition, they will go to the various gods to search for treasures. After entering, we try not to cause trouble, there are many strong people. Tan Yun said with a smile, I understand, if you can bear it, you can bear it. This video will end here.